Is everyone having a wonderful day so far? Today is kind of a big deal, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, first, it is Sunday. It is one of my favorite days of the week. It is easily one of my top 7. Yeah, I knew it would come around. Second, today is the start of a brand new series of talks, and it is the International Day of Peace. There is a beautiful service here tonight at 7, right here in the sanctuary. If you can make it, please do. There will be representatives from 7 different faith traditions here, but this isn't about religion or even faith. It is only about peace. There are no sermons, but there's plenty of music and poetry, and most importantly, purpose. So everybody is welcome, whether they have a faith practice or not. And the more people who come together with that vision and intention of peace, the greater the world's movement toward reflecting that peace. So please bring your friends and your family and your neighbors and passers-by and friendly seeming strangers. Please bring them all. And while I am thinking about it, did anyone notice that the choir's a little thin this morning? And there's nobody conducting any dang thing? There's a good reason for it. It's because a good chunk of our choir is working elsewhere. If you guys are into rocks and minerals, Mona would have killed me if I never gave this plug. The Pasadena Lapidary Society is having their annual show right now. It is at the Masonic Temple/Lodge on Duarte Road. It is I think it's just west of Santa Anita on the south side of the street. This is the last day. So if you want to go and check it out, you're going to want to get your hiney over there real quick. Because today is the day that all the vendors are going to be packing up, and they don't want to have to carry it all home. So you might be able to swing a deal or two. So they've got all kinds of rocks, really, really incredible stuff, lots of fossils, beads, artwork, displays and learning opportunities. I believe there's even a jewelry making demonstration there. I worked it last year, but I have no time this year. So if that is something that interests you, head on over. It is free. And they'll be packing it up this afternoon. All right. So was my opening persuasive enough? Did it make you want to surrender and join the fun? Right? It did, right? No? Okay, because that right there is what our new series is about, surrender. And I have to admit that as this topic was drawing near, I had no idea where I was supposed to go with it. In fact, I didn't even have a rough direction that I could aim toward until Tuesday night. And even the little bit of perspective I gained was kind of ambiguous. I just knew that I had a word and that I'd figure out what was supposed to happen when the time came. And I'm going to back up a little bit. Most of you know the way this whole sermon plan thing goes for me, right? So I'll be going along minding my business, and all of a sudden a list of words just drops into my head. And thus far, it's always 5 words, and each one of those words I do 5 talks for and explore each of the areas of focus. But that is all I get. I get a list. And I have no idea why that list is in there. The rest comes into me the week before each sermon is written. Okay? Sometimes I have no idea where I'm going until I finish writing. And I always write Saturday night. So I had no idea what was going to happen. But as this week moved along, and Tuesday's insight gave way to Wednesday's service, and then Thursday's choir, and then karaoke night on Friday, which is misprinted in your bulletins. It was last Friday. This Friday is fire support group. But it all became, began to become, gosh, my brain and my mouth are not jiving well right now. It began to come together, all the thoughts throughout the week. And I will tell you what I mean by that, but I'm not going to tell you yet because I want you to understand something. Okay? Although the words that I'm focused on for each series change, the truths I teach within each series, you may have noticed, are very, very similar. Right? It is because the truth, the divine truth with that capital D, it's simple. It really is. The hard part is figuring out how to do the things to make that truth part of your daily experience. In fact, make it your entire daily experience. And that is my job. I get to teach you how to do the things. And so it may seem like I am saying the same thing over and over. I am. And as long as I'm a minister here and you keep letting me come teach, I will continue to do that because the truth doesn't change. It is constant. It has been the truth since the dawn of time at the very, very beginning, and it will remain unchanged until the end of time if there were such a thing. And this is it. First, love is the only thing that matters. Period. All of this is love. And it is love because of love. Okay, second, anything which is not love comes from, do you remember? Fear. Whether we want to admit it or not, everything which is not love is rooted in fear. And last, we are meant to operate from love as love, demonstrating only love, experiencing only love, and learning that the more love you give, the more love you have. And the ultimate truth, which holds all of that up, is the truth that everything and everyone, everywhere is one. The job every one of us has, the one that we're assigned at birth and the one that we're meant to fulfill throughout this human experience, is to love and be loved. And that's it. The heart of God explained in 110 words. All the truth that I know, all on one page. It just seems to be a challenge to live from truth, right? Our biblical reading this morning was from James' general epistle. That was chapter 1, right in the very beginning, verses 2 through 8. And he says, "My brethren, take it as a joy to you when you enter into many and varied temptations, for you know that the trial of faith will increase your patience. And let patience be a perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, lacking nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and with grace, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith, not doubting. For he who doubts is like the waves of the sea driven by the wind and tossed. Thus, let not that man suppose that he will receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." James was saying that when life gets all lifey, right? When things get scary and uncertain, as they are bound to do, when things get unpredictable, when life starts putting things in our path which seem to create stumbling blocks or complete detours, when everything seems a mess and you don't know which end is up, know that the whole mess is there to teach you patience in your trusting faith. Yes, it can seem like a lot. Certainly. But if you are sitting here in this room or you're listening online, it probably means that you believe there's a God, a higher power, a divine hand that's just guiding everything. No matter what name you give it, you believe there is something greater within this life. You're probably here in this space because you know That when you come to a place like this, you learn about that higher power. You feel touched by the love of that spirit. You feel moved and held by the source of all. And what all of that boils down to is that you feel safe, loved, and supported. So what happens when you leave here? What happens, I'm going to call some folks out. What happens sometimes right here in the sanctuary after we sing about that? You know, we sing about letting love be on earth and letting it begin with us. What happens after that? Why does that safety and love and support seem to disappear? And why do some of us immediately start thinking and talking about our fear with others who are also in fear? You noticed again that the choir was real small today. One voice alone can be heard. Two or more, it gets louder and louder and louder, and the more we talk about it, the more we scream about it, the more we cry about it, the bigger it happens. Be with that for a moment, because we don't have to do that. That is what James is talking about. He is saying that in the midst of the mess, you must remember that there are loving hands of a loving God moving everything that is, and let that be enough. You must remember that it is up to those divine hands to guide things, not you. Surprise! Not even if you think that your plan of attack is strong and has merit. Because you can't trust God and try to control the world in any way. James says that when you are feeling fearful and it's getting hard to see that there could be anything good happening, he says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and with grace, and it will be given to him. For example, you might say something like, Spirit, I know you're there, I feel you, and I know you're here with me. Help me see your love at work here, because everything looks scary, and I'm really struggling not to lose my mind on someone here. So will you please give me just a glimpse of good during this time? Pretty simple. But James goes on to say something really, really important, and this is big. Let him ask in faith, not doubting. Not doubting. So, to get right to the point, you can't believe in a loving force guiding everything and also believe that there is something which is not being guided by love. You can't ask for love to be revealed and then doubt that it exists in any situation. Because if you do, you can't expect to get that revelation you say you want. How can Spirit provide the evidence of love, of that love that you seek, when you choose to focus on all of the stuff which you have decided is wrong and dark and unloving, and perhaps, you might even believe it's downright evil. I've heard that being thrown around. Hear me when I say this. You can't ask love to reveal love when you choose to see hate, when you choose to see an enemy. You've got to surrender. You've got to lay down your ideas and your judgment and your plans, the gossip and the fear and the blame, the beliefs in suffering and pain and lack. Yes, I do, in fact, know exactly how difficult, how impossible it can sometimes seem to see love in the ugly. But I know something else too. Something else that's even bigger, and that is that God is absolutely in the mess. The only place where God is not is fear, and fear exists only in the mind. How can God ease your fear when you are seeking evidence to justify your fear? You created the fear, like it or not. It's you who made the fear. God is in the details, but the fear about those details is in your mind. You have to surrender and embrace the knowing that love will always win. Because again, it's the only thing that's real. Love really truly is working within the wreckage, no matter how loudly you scream about it. And I'm going to give you an example of what I am talking about next. And I'm intentionally not going to go into specifics here because, as we know on this International Day of Peace, there's a whole lot of war in this world. So I'm not naming locations because things like this are happening all over. And while I would love to take credit for this beautiful story, it was authored by somebody else who didn't give a name, and I kind of stumbled across it when I was spelunking on the internet last night, and it perfectly makes sense to where I'm going today. And it is, again, beautifully written, so whoever did, thank you. It begins, the day began with a photograph in an old singed album. The color had been washed out by dust and sun, and parts of the edges were blurred, erased by the wind that carried the war. Amir, a young doctor whose hands had once known only the delicate work of stitching skin, now felt callous from lifting shattered concrete. He walked through the rubble of what was once the main square, his surgical kit replaced by a canvas bag of scavenged supplies. He had prayed. He had prayed when the first shells fell, when the hospital's windows shattered, and when his sister's laughter was silenced by a collapsing wall. At first, his prayers were pleas, desperate and loud. Ya Rab, protect us, he would whisper into the dust. But as the months dragged on, as the hunger gnawed and the fear settled deep in his bones, his prayers became smaller and harder. They turned into a silent accusation. Where are you? One evening, he came upon a family huddled in a partially collapsed basement. It was a mother, a young boy with a fever, and a baby girl with an infected cut on her foot. The mother, a woman named Lena, with tired eyes, watched them with fragile hope. Amir examined the girl, Miriam. The infection was bad, and his antibiotic supply was nearly gone. He was running on empty in body and spirit and resources. As he worked cleaning the wound with his last drops of sterilized water, the shelling began again. The sound was a familiar, monstrous tearing of the sky. The boy whimpered and buried his face in his mother's arm. Miriam, however, did not cry. Her eyes, wide and dark, watched Amir's hands with an intense, unblinking focus. The mother began to sing a lullaby, her voice thin but unwavering, trying to drown out that sound of destruction. Amir, a man of science and logic, had long since stopped believing in the miracles people spoke of. He believed only in what he could see, touch, and fix. But as Lena sang, and as the base of the explosion shook the earth beneath them, a thought settled in his mind, quiet and small. He finished his work bandaging Miriam's foot with a clean strip of cloth. The boy had fallen asleep, curled against his mother. The shelling had stopped, leaving a heavy and now unnatural quiet. "Thank you," Lena whispered, her voice raw. Amir nodded but did not reply. He felt no pride, only that familiar weariness. He stood to leave. As he did, Miriam reached out a tiny, grimy hand and grabbed his finger. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Amir looked at her small, intent face. He saw not just a child in need, but a flicker of something unbroken. He pulled his hand away gently, but she held on. He looked at her mother, who smiled sadly and shook her head. Amir knelt down again, looking at that small hand wrapped around his. The infection in her foot was a visible sign of suffering, but her grip was an equally visible sign of trust. In that moment, an understanding came to him, not as a revelation, but as a quiet realization. He had spent months looking for God in the wreckage, in the grand sweeping narratives of salvation and protection. He had looked for a lightning bolt, a divine voice telling him what to do. He had mistaken God's silence for absence. But the evidence of God was not in the chaos of the shells. God was in Lena's small, brave lullaby. God was in the boy finding sleep amidst the terror. God was in the tiny, fierce grip of a baby's hand on his finger. He wasn't meant to have all the answers. He wasn't meant to fix everything. His job wasn't to perform miracles, but to be a small part of them. In the simple, unblinking trust of a child, he saw a light that no amount of shrapnel could extinguish. He hadn't been abandoned. He had been given new purpose. To be a tiny, persistent flicker of hope in overwhelming darkness. He sat with them for a while longer, just holding the baby's hand. The warmth of her tiny fingers was a gentle rebuke to his despair. He had prayed for God to be present. Turned out he was there all along, hiding in plain sight. Friends, we have a job to do within the chaos. A task given to us by those divine hands guiding everything, but it isn't marching or shouting or beating fists, and it most certainly isn't in alienating others, keeping score, or closing doors. Our job is simple and very, very clear. Love is our job. Joy is our job. Remember when I said I got an inkling as to where I would be going today on Tuesday night? That was during our weekly study group of A Course in Miracles, where we read this from lesson 100, and it spoke deeply to me. I found myself grinning from ear to ear, understanding it. It says, "You are indeed essential to God's plan. Without your joy, his joy is incomplete. Without your smile, the world cannot be saved. While you are sad, the light that God himself appointed as the means to save the world is dim and lusterless. And no one laughs because all laughter can only echo yours. You are indeed essential to God's plan. Just as your light increases every light that shines in heaven, so your joy on earth calls to all minds to let their sorrows go and to take their place beside you in God's plan. God's messengers are joyous, and their joy heals sorrow and despair. They are the proof that God wills perfect happiness for all who will accept their Father's gifts as theirs. And the lesson went on to say in the very next line that we are to choose not to be sad. And someone in the class raised a very valid and very vulnerable human question. He said, how? How do you just choose not to be sad? I don't choose the way I feel when valid emotions come up, and I'm being inauthentic if I mask my feelings with a face of joy. Meanwhile, I'm crying in my head. And we all talked, everyone in the room, but the conversation didn't really get anywhere. So cut to Wednesday night during our service, I brought the same quote in with me and we talked it out. And that is where clarity emerged. So listen up and listen closely. If you or people that you know are having a hard time finding their place as love, if you are struggling to choose to smile, let alone be joyful, if you're looking for good but not seeing any, you have to be it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about, and it may seem really silly at first. It may seem pointless and fruitless, but if you are struggling to find joy, it means that there are hundreds or thousands of others in that struggle who are also coming up short. So create the joy in the world, even if you don't feel it. Create moments of magic and kindness and wonder which are entirely unpredictable and completely anonymous. Imagine this, okay? You're in a grocery store and you're ticking off your list, because we all have one, right? And you get to the word peanuts. So you head down the aisle and you pick up a jar of Planters peanuts. And you look down and discover that that little iconic Planters guy, he's looking right back at you through his monocle with a big googly eye. Okay, some of us have already begun. Some people I know are carrying pocketfuls of googly eye stickers and sticking them to stuff. Just randomly, wherever we feel inspired or whenever we feel like we'd like some joy for ourselves. And I'm not naming names or locations or any other identifying information, because Grinches do exist and they will tattle on you. So I also just bought 1,000 little glow-in-the-dark acrylic duckies in various colors, and I will be liberally sprinkling those in the world for people to find. Plant joy. Find new and creative ways to be kind. Extra points if nobody catches you doing it. Because like love, joy doesn't math. If you create evidence of good in a world which seems less than good, if you create that for others, you will begin to discover that good is revealed to you in ways that you never could have imagined. When you can't find your own, create some for someone else. Because you're not the only one looking for a sign that love is in the mess. Show others that it's there, that there is light and joy and good in every moment, and soon you will discover quite effortlessly that you can see good in everything. Surrender your belief that bad exists and realize that the world can be changed and made whole again through simple, small, quiet acts of joy. I can't wait to hear all of the ways that you have revealed the holy in the world next week. I look forward to hearing them. Thank you.